But for every good arcade game we got, there's the bad ones.
Oh, there's plenty of bad ones, Wes. Plenty
There's
of bad ones.
There's some bad ones.
Where should we start on this wonderful list
Woo!
of atrocities?
Bad arcade ports. Man, I you know what? I got to start with Pac-Man for the Atari 2600 because Pac-Man was so hugely popular.
I mean, people will be like, "Oh, it's the version I had, so I love it." And it was terrible. It was so slow. And I mean, it looked nothing like the arcade game.
First the Pac-Man eats through a maze of dots. Then the Pac-Man heads for the corner spots. Then he eats his fill of a power pill. And then all those ghosts turn blue. Boo! And Pac-Man eats them all too.
Only Atari makes the Pac-Man home video game, and you can only play it on an Atari video game system.
Have you played Atari today?
It looks, obviously the Atari isn't even as close to powerful as an arcade machine from back then, but oh my god, dude, this just looks terrible. Go look at a picture of it. It looks horrible.
It was bad. Playing tons and tons of hours on Pac-Man in the arcade when word got out that it was coming home and you can go to your local Sears or Toys R Us and buy Pac-Man for the 2600. That was one of the ones I'm like, Mom, Dad, please go buy me Pac-Man for my Atari and I won't go to the arcade anymore. But it was... okay, my younger self was like, oh my God, we're playing Pac-Man at home. Looking through it now with these eyes, I'm like, what the heck was I thinking? They weren't dots, they were wafers. The board itself wasn't the same as the arcade, and it was just they tried. I'll give Atari an A for effort. They tried. But man, it was bad.
I mean, it was definitely bad. I mean, you could make excuses for it back then. If you played it today, here's how I know I would not be able to play it for more than 5 seconds. I love Pac-Man games. Love them. Like the traditional ones. The 3D ones are fine, but the traditional Pac-Man games I really like a lot. And Ms. Pac-Man is like so good. It's faster. It's like, when you move, it feels like it's instantly responsive. When I go back and I play like the arcade version of the original Pac-Man, that seems like light years away, like terribly far away from how good Ms. Pac-Man is. And then to go play the Atari 26... Are you kidding me? I can barely play regular Pac-Man without being irritated. There's no way I'm playing that trash.
Yeah, man. And then you know what? It's funny you say Miss Pac-Man because when they released Miss Pac-Man for the Atari, it was so much better. Not that it was arcade perfect. It was way better than Pac-Man. Way better than Pac-Man.
Had to be.
But, back then, this was early 80s. You didn't know any better. They're like, don't play it. And we did. We bought it and liked it.
You had to go with what you could get, man. That's what it was. Now, the next one, this game is like huge. It was huge in the arcades. It's probably the reason Nintendo still, became anything. This was their first major hit. It's not their first release, but it was the biggest game they ever had at that time. And it's really put Nintendo on the map. It was an arcade game. It was not the NES. And this was Donkey Kong. That was a great version. But we're not talking about the arcade version. We're talking again about the 2600.
Did you hear the disappointment in my voice?
Not a good port.
No. And I loved Donkey Kong. Growing up, I loved Donkey Kong.
Me too.
I loved it. I think I bought Donkey Kong for everything that it came out for. ColecoVision, I bought it because I was like, man, this is really good. But before that, got the Atari. Yeah, I was again. We that's what we got. So I was like, okay, I'll force myself to like it. It game is horrible.
It's amazing that the NES version is so much better, like totally competent compared to
Oh,
the
blows
Atari
it
version.
blows it out of the water. It's like Donkey Kong doesn't even look like Donkey Kong. Like
No,
Mario doesn't look like Mario. It was
Wes, it was Jumpman at the time. There
it
was no
was
Mario.
Jumpman. It
That's
was
right.
Jumpman.
And he was a carpenter, not a plumber.
Man, whatever it was, it sucked.
It did. It's not a good port.
You know, they tried, and it was the concept of Donkey Kong was there. You still had to climb the ladders, but it, as far as look wise, like cosmetically, it just the graphics just. The Atari at 2600, I think, could have done a little bit better.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, it
Just
was
a little
really
bit.
the Atari. You really still at that time. You really had to use your imagination to like, okay, that's a car. I'm going to use my imagination to pretend that that thing on the screen that's a bunch of squares is a car. You know, and you kind of had to do that with everything. And then the NES came along. And it's like, oh well, you can kind of see that's
Mm-hmm.
that's a car that looks like a car. Obviously, it got better and better over time. By the time Super Nintendo came around, you're like, oh, that's a car.
Exactly.
There was no questioning what you were looking at.
You know, I don't know if it was a matter of production time. They had to rush it out to try to capitalize on the Donkey Kong craze, but they spent like all of 2 hours making this game and just put it out.
I mean, Atari did that multiple times where they were rushing games out. I mean, obviously, there was the crash in the 80s of the video game industry, which was kind of spearheaded by Atari. And that led to, forcing games out too quickly, like E.T.
Yeah. Yeah, I played that as a kid too.
Of course you did.
And I loved
Aquaman.
it.
I played E.T. too, and it's whatever.
It is what it is.
It was a game that was certainly made in like a 3-week period of time.
Oh, yes. Because you kept doing the same thing over and over after the first 5 minutes.
Yeah. Not a fan. What I was a fan of was Mortal Kombat.
Oh, man. I love Mortal Kombat. Love Mortal Kombat in the arcade.
It was fantastic. It had those. I forget what were those graphics called when they like.
They were digitized. Digitized characters.
That's it. Digitized. Yeah, they would digitize the people and put them inside of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And then because Mortal Kombat took off, the next thing you know, all these games have these digitized characters in them. But, I mean, Mortal Kombat was spectacular.
Yes, it was. We never seen anything like that in a video game ever. And it was like, wow. The blood, the graphics, it was, man,
ripping a head out with a spinal cord attached.
Yes, the fatalities. We're like, what is this?
Punching someone in the chest and pulling out their heart.
In the arcade, man, Mortal Kombat, every Mortal Kombat machine was taken up.
Oh,
like people,
lines. Even the local arcades. I got a small local arcade. That machine always had people standing behind it waiting to play.
Oh yeah, they had, and the arcade had the arcade I frequented had like 4 or 5 Mortal Kombat machines all set up, and they were always somebody was always on them. Yeah. Granted, I was on it the longest because I was unbeatable. I was so good. I was so good. I would tell people the next person to play me, like, okay, who do you want to get destroyed by? You pick whoever you want me to play as. That's how good I was. And it didn't matter who they picked, they lost. And then 2 came out, and I sucked. Because they changed the mechanics and everything.
And they made it better, but it was definitely deeper mechanics. Things were switched up for sure. But that first game I played quite a bit. You would have destroyed me in the arcade. I have no doubt. No doubt. And now this is somewhere we disagree. We're talking about bad ports, Wes. I think you're crazy. I think these ports are totally fine.
Okay.
I don't think they're bad. I don't think they're great. I think they're competent ports on, mostly on the Genesis. The SNES didn't have blood, and there was, SNES, whatever. I don't even care about that. I'm not going to defend that one. But the Genesis one, I'm going to defend a little bit.
Well, that's why it's kind of okay. Is it a bad port? No, it's not. The Super Nintendo one sounded better than the Genesis one. It looked better than the Genesis one.
But it didn't have no blood.
There was no blood. There was no fatalities.
That was the whole point of the game.
It's like, what is this? What is this? And then we got the Genesis one, and it didn't look as nice as the Super Nintendo version. Your characters were a little smaller. The colors weren't as bright. But it had the blood. So it's like, I mean, was it a bad port? No. Could it have been better? I think so.
I'm not going to say that it couldn't have been better. I agree with you on that. But I certainly don't think it was bad, especially because I have very... Here's what would happen. I mostly played the Genesis version because that's what I had, you know. I wanted the blood and all that fun stuff, right? But I would go to other people's house and they'd be like, oh, you want to play Mortal Kombat in the SNES? No. No, I don't want to play... No. Do you want to come to my house and play on the Genesis so we can get some blood in this bitch? Maybe we'll do that. But what other games do you have? I'm not interested in playing your Mortal Kombat on the Super Nintendo. Not happening. We can go to the arcade. That's fine.
With the sweat.
Yeah, see the blue sweat. I remember playing it a couple times, man, and just being like, this is so dumb. Sub-Zero throws blue ice. Is that ice coming off them or sweat? Which is it?
That's why, you know, it little controversial here. It's not that it's a bad port. I just feel it could have been better because I remember, again, living in the arcade and Mortal Kombat Monday. Was like the big thing. Mortal Monday. Mortal Monday was the big thing. You know, again, that buzzword, play the arcade experience at home. Man, I couldn't wait. And then we got what we got. Not that it was bad, but, you know, I don't know.
I don't think it was bad. I think the only bad thing that ever came out of Mortal Kombat was that we got the ESRB, unfortunately. But that was probably bound to happen at some point in the future anyways. But that certainly escalated things once Mortal Kombat came out. The next thing you know, there's an ESRB logo available like weeks later.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm curious, whoever's watching, please leave in the comments what your thoughts were on Mortal Kombat. Now, again, I just want to make it clear, I'm not saying it's a bad port.
See, now he's walking it back.
But it's on our bad port list because, like, the Super Nintendo version, really, there was no blood, and the Genesis one it was okay. I think they could have did a lot better because when 2 came out, both versions did leaps and bounds better than the original.
Yeah, I mean, 2 was better on both systems. And SNES, to be fair, had the blood and stuff once 2 came out. Nintendo was fine, like, okay, do what you want.
Exactly.
But yeah, you gotta love Mortal Kombat. And the arcade ports, debatable.
Debatable.